how did these two hack London's transport system in one of the biggest cyber attacks in British history?
These were very sophisticated actors. They have access to things like names and email addresses of a large number of people.
The slightly alarming thing is they say the hackers are still in the system.
Some bank details may have been exposed during the breach.
Essentially, TfL had to shut down almost all of its behind-the-scenes systems in order to contain the damage.
It is now one of the biggest data breaches in UK history.
Thalha Jubair and Owen Flowers were still teenagers when they crippled Transport for London's computer systems, and they did it from their bedrooms. Take yourself back to August 2024. Sir Keir Starmer was only a month into the job as Prime Minister. The first £1 coins with King Charles III on them entered circulation, and Declan Rice was controversially sent off in Arsenal's draw with Brighton. Can you tell I'm an Arsenal fan? But as the month came to an end, there was something potentially catastrophic happening at Transport for London. In the early hours of the 1st of September, the National Crime Agency alerted TfL bosses that the body had been hit by a massive cyber attack. Thalha Jubair, who's now 20, and his accomplice, 18-year-old Owen Flowers, infiltrated TfL's computer systems, causing millions of pounds of damage, which took months to fix. Both were hacking as part of an international cyber criminal group called Scattered Spider. Yes, the buses, trains and tubes were still running, but behind the scenes, the hackers were making their way deeper into TfL's online systems. Apparently, they were searching for information they could use, including the personal details of London celebrities. Transport for London were forced to effectively turn a huge number of IT systems off, 140 in fact. And that meant there were problems with Oyster card accounts, dial-a-ride bookings and live tracking. The drastic measure also impacted staff, as I found out from the BBC's cyber correspondent Joe Tidy.
And what I think is so fascinating about this cyber attack was it's kind of rare to see a visual representation of how much damage was caused. But with this one, I remember when I was covering it, I heard that all the staff had to come in and re-authenticate themselves physically, which is an enormous task for a company. 28,000 employees had to be kicked off the network and then go into an office physically and say, here's my ID, I am who I say I am, please can I log back into the internal systems.
But that was not before the criminals managed to get a hold of customer data. At first, TfL said a few thousand people were victims. The BBC revealed it was actually millions of us.
But then I found out from a contact in the cyber world, actually, did you know that that sum is more like 10 million people? And I was stunned. So I got sent the list, and I looked down the list, it was a huge number of people. TfL still won't say how many it is, but there are about 10.5 million lines in there.
And you're on there, and I could be on there.
You probably are.
Yeah.
Something like TfL, they are a victim here. They didn't hack themselves, but at the same time they have a duty to be honest and open and transparent with the victims here. They are a victim, but also the customers are victims as well.
TfL told the BBC it carried out a thorough investigation into the hack, but they've refused to give a precise figure of how many people were affected. And it's worth mentioning that TfL was cleared by the UK's data watchdog of any wrongdoing for the breach and its handling of the aftermath.
I think it's fair to say that without Transport for London's really positive engagement, their very early engagement and their cooperation, it's possible we wouldn't have seen this result.
All in all, the hack cost Transport for London 39 million quid. But Jubair and Flowers didn't get away with it. After a massive operation from the National Crime Agency, the FBI, Interpol and others, the pair are now behind bars. They've both been sent to prison for 5.5 years.
Our actions were primarily motivated by selfish bravado.
Even when they were sentenced, neither of the two young people showed really any emotion at all.
These offenders could have brought London to a standstill, and the economic scale of that harm would have been huge.
The defendants showed a complete disregard for the disruption and harm their actions could have caused.
These offenders were part of Scattered Spider, a criminal group responsible for some of the most serious and damaging cyber attacks affecting the UK and countries around the world. As a result of this investigation, that threat has been significantly disrupted and degraded.
So who were these hackers? Thalha Jubair grew up here in Bow in East London, in one of these council blocks behind me. He had an interest in gaming and computing from an early age. At age 4, he got a phone. At age 7, he got a laptop. At 9 or 10, he was writing his own code. and at 13 or 14 he'd been identified by other hackers as having potential. His online aliases included Earth2Star, Brad and @Autistic. He'd been known to police for years and in fact had 22 previous convictions relating to fraud, hacking and harassment. He's also accused in the US of carrying out 120 attacks against 47 different companies and levying $115 million in ransom payments.
Well, Jubair is a name that has been floating around the cybersecurity world, my sort of geek nerd world, for a long time. This kid was involved in many, many cybercrimes long before TfL. In fact, I remembered his name because I was in a court case in 2023 where he was accused of being part of a gang called Lapsus.
Owen Flowers, meanwhile, grew up with his grandma and uncle in Walsall in the West Midlands. The National Crime Agency said he was also a very online kid who spent lots of time in his bedroom. His lawyers told a hearing he had a difficult adolescence and was autistic. At one point, the police tried to stop him taking a criminal path, but he didn't engage. He even kept hacking once he'd been arrested.
We knew a bit less about Flowers. His name was around the last couple of years, but we didn't really know to what extent. And now, of course, we know that as well as admitting to the hacks at TfL and others in America, he's got this long history that goes back to just after his 16th birthday when he was first knocked on the door by the police and given a cease and desist order.
Now, it's worth remembering that Flowers was 17 and Jubair was 18 when they hacked Transport for London. They were described as computer-obsessed loners, but experienced and talented hackers capable of wreaking havoc. What's interesting about the way they did all this is that they effectively blagged their way in, starting by tricking the organisation into resetting user passwords, then gaining further entry.
And it's basically a form of social engineering where they call up and get a human being on the other end of the line to do something, in this case, give them access. So it was not particularly technical, we could say. This group in particular has tended to recruit a lot of young English-speaking people into their gangs, but I guess because of this social engineering aspect, they need to have great English language skills.
They will pick up the phone quite often or send text messages pretending to be an employee of a company, and they'll say, I've lost my password, can you give me a password reset? And then that gets them in. And then the magic kind of happens after that. Once they're in, then they work out how to move, we call it laterally through the network.
For a while, Jubair and Flowers thought they were a step ahead. Transport for London didn't actually know they were in the system for days. And as they hacked, they were trying to create weaknesses and leaving doors for other hackers to potentially enter through in the future. They did, of course, manage to export a significant amount of data before TfL's drastic measures worked and they were shut out. At the same time, though, officers were onto them. When Flowers was arrested on the 6th of September, his computer was still connected and in the middle of another hack. This laptop would then lead police to Jubair. Officers found recordings of him and Jubair executing the hack while the two of them chatted on Telegram. At court, it was said they were even arguing over who was doing more work, with Flowers complaining that Jubair wasn't making enough progress. So who or what is Scattered Spider, the so-called cyber criminal collective Jubair and Flowers were part of? The group has been linked to dozens of other cyber attacks, including on Marks & Spencer's and the Co-op.
So Scattered Spider is what we would say an organized cybercrime group that has come to be recognized by law enforcement and cybersecurity practitioners. It's not perhaps as organized or as structured as what we would consider conventional crime gangs, but it's certainly sharing tactics and strategies and ways of working.
There's a lot of infighting. It's a real kind of toxic viper's nest of unsupervised boys with lots of money because of hacking, gang warfare, going after each other, that kind of thing.
We've learned of an occasion when Jubair fell out with rival hackers, leading to his personal details and images being leaked online. We were also sent a video of a gang-style drill track featuring Jubair, and another which appears to show him being held hostage and beaten, but there is a suggestion this was staged. The bigger question, of course, is why were they doing it? Some experts think it was simply about getting rich. Flowers and Jubair were said to have accumulated millions of pounds in stolen or ransomed cryptocurrency from previous hacks.
They were not naive. They knew what they were doing. And there's only one real reason to do that, and that's to amass a huge amount of money, and that's what they did.
But when it came to TfL, no ransom demand was made, and police say it's possible their motivation was more about notoriety and kudos.
There's no pattern here. Most of the cyber attacks we see, and I think it's the same with TfL, is that they are sort of opportunistic, really. The larger ecosystem, they will go after vulnerabilities, not companies.
As they were sent down to start their 5.5 years in prison, the judge called it selfish bravado. What we do know is that these teenagers managed to get themselves deep into TfL's computer systems from their bedrooms. How close they were to doing something like shutting down the tube, we'll never know.